In 2026, AI is going to completely reshape the way we design software and applications. And in this video, I'm going to break down everything you need to know about this next generation of design tools and show you exactly how you can use one of these tools to actually start designing on top of a real application's code base. And this is not just about new features or new tools. This is about a complete shift in the way that we approach software and user experience design in a way that applies to both individual people building applications using vibe coding tools and designers on design teams contributing to an existing product. If you don't know me, my name is Chris, and for the last 15 years I've been designing apps and advising startups on product and design. And with that said, let's break down exactly what is happening in design right now and how you can use these tools to actually design real software and applications.
Build great products. Build great products.
So before we jump into tools, let's break down a little bit about the history of design in software. So I started my career as a web designer, and before tools like Figma existed, you would design websites in Photoshop and then manually slice all of the assets to give to a developer to go and build that website. And it wasn't until tools like Sketch came in that people designing applications and software actually had a proper tool to design those in. Now that was a huge change, and thousands of designers moved from Photoshop and legacy design tools to actual tools specifically designed for user experience and user interface, and the main one that people used at the time was Sketch. After Sketch became hugely popular, Figma then launched, and this was in 2016 when Figma came onto the market, and initially it was not a massively popular tool. Bear in mind that at a lot of companies, switching between tools is a very labor-intensive thing, and actually getting buy-in from design teams to move to a different tool is very difficult. Now, I worked at multiple companies where I brought Figma onto the design team and showed everyone how to use it and kind of acted as a bit of an ambassador for Figma on the team, because the main problem that Figma solved was this idea of handing over a design to a developer to actually go and build that design in code. Figma actually enabled designers to create a design, to create a link to share that design, and then to send that link to a developer so that they could go into the actual design file, see how the design was constructed, see all of the details of that design, and then recreate that in code, whether that was for a software application or for a website. And this is where we've seen this trend happening in the design industry over the last 10 to 15 years, is that slowly the more mature software and applications become, the closer design moves to the world of code, and the closer code moves to the world of design. And these things are getting closer and closer, and we're about to enter the next huge shift in this journey. Now, just over a year ago, Lovable and Bolt launched, and these tools became massively popular. And in the last year, designers and builders have been exploring how to design, prototype, and build real applications using natural language in vibe coding tools without knowing how to code. But the issue is that these, a lot of the time, are still just prototypes. Now, don't get me wrong, you can build full applications using Lovable or using Bolt, but if you're working on an existing product or you're building something more complex, the code that these tools generate is often still completely disposable code, especially if you're working on a design team. So how do we solve this issue? Well, this is where we enter this next huge shift in AI design tools. And the change that we're going to see in 2026 is a whole host of new emerging design tools that aren't just about creating designs that you can give to developers to build, but are actually about designing on top of real products and real application code. Imagine being able to take an app that already exists, open it in a design tool, and then describe exactly the design changes that you want to make, and then make that change live to the actual product. Now you might ask, well, isn't this just going to be all purple gradients and really bad AI slop design? Well, up until about a month ago, I would have said yes. But with the release of Gemini 3 and Opus 4.5 from Anthropic, we now have AI models that are actually really good at design. What's more, we also have the concept of creating specific AI agents with instructions that make them even better at design as well. And so now you understand a little bit about the history of design tools, what's happened in the past, and where we're about to go. Let me walk through how you can actually do this today with an application that you've already built using one of the biggest AI design tools in the market right now, Tempo. Now, this video is sponsored by Tempo, but I've been talking to the team and the founders at Tempo about their vision for the product and where they want to take it. And I believe that Tempo is going to be one of the leaders in this field. And they've been building a tool that actually lets you take a real application and design on top of it. So let's jump into the demo and see what it can do. So let me actually show you what this design workflow looks like in practice using Tempo. And there are a bunch of other tools coming out at the moment that use Gemini 3 and these other more visually aware AI models to do a very similar thing. But I think the vision that Tempo has for the direction that design is going in software and applications is kind of unique. And I'm going to show you a few workflows here and break down exactly how you can work with Tempo. But the main thing I want to show you is how you can work from a real application's code base and actually start making design changes on top of it and submit these as pull requests to the repository for that product. So if you have an application already, when you log in with Tempo, what you're going to basically see is this view here. And you can start by vibe coding something from scratch, as you can with a lot of these tools. And Tempo was one of the original kind of vibe coding tools in the space. But what is super interesting about Tempo is that you can bring in your existing code base. And I think this is going to be the workflow that brings such a huge change to design in 2026. Now, I may be wrong. It may take a few more years, but I honestly think that this is the way to go for designing software and applications. All you do is click import from GitHub, choose a repository or connect your GitHub account, and then choose the repository that you want to bring in. Basically, give it a name, choose the node version that you're working with, and you can add in a bunch of other advanced things here, like the development server port or any of the kind of commands here to actually install dependencies, run the build, all of that sort of stuff. If you don't know that, that's absolutely fine. This is stuff that developers can help you set up. If you are working in a company with a real application, you want to bring it into Tempo or you want to try bring it into Tempo, this stuff is what developers can help you set up. And when you create a project here, this is going to create a separate branch in your code base specifically for Tempo. So it's not going to make any changes to any of your kind of main branches in your production code base or in your GitHub repository. It's not going to touch it. It's going to create a totally separate branch. And I want to show you what it's like to work with Tempo once you've got a project like this up and running. And so this is what Tempo looks like. And I've just connected it to one of my apps that I did for a recent build using Cursor, which is Get Inkwell, which is basically an AI writing app that I just built for the purposes of the Cursor course that I ran through. And I've connected this repository in GitHub to Tempo directly. And it's also recognized that this is using Convex for my database and authentication. And so let's kind of break down the Tempo interface here, because this looks a little bit different to your traditional vibe coding tool. So what you've got on the right hand side is you've got your canvas where you can add like all of the screens from your application. You can also work within this screen here. If I click on this view here to actually have a look at your application live and go through and use the different parts of it. So I can kind of just use my application here exactly as I would in a local development environment and then go back to the canvas if I want to. You also have 3 different modes at the top. So you have PRD, design, and code. In design mode, you can look at your design tokens, and you can also click on any element here to get an idea of any Tailwind classes that are being used, position, sizing, spacing, layout, and all of this sort of stuff, and styles as well. So we can click on individual elements here and actually see the layout and the spacing of this and change that live in the on the website here. So I'm going to actually revert that change because I don't want to change that, but that is changing it kind of live in the code for this application. If I open that in the full view here, you can see that that's updated the layout for that section. And so this is just like designing my application live in a design tool, basically on the right hand side, with everything pulled from that application's code base. I can also go into the code view here and I get the kind of traditional like terminal, console, and code view. So you can look through any of the code in your actual project here, open it in this code viewer, and make any changes to the code directly if you do want to do that. Or the PRD view, which is super interesting here, is you can actually create PRDs for features that you want to build and create user diagrams using AI, and then add any visual context for this feature that you might want to use. So this is the kind of editor view for your project in Tempo once you've imported it from a existing repository. The really interesting part about this, though, is that you don't just have to work in this view. You can work in a traditional kind of project management style view here. So the way that this kind of works is that this inc-1 is a branch in my code base for this feature that I'm working on. So we can name this feature. So let's say design improvements for the landing page. And I can write some features here that I want to add to like update the hero styling. And that is this feature that we've added here. I'm going to put this in progress. And then what we can do is we can add more tasks here and we can create a canvas for these tasks. So let's say I want to do an updated design on the document editor page. We go update document editor design. So let's create a canvas for this. We can then also change the priority. So we'll change that to high. I'll put it in to do. And we can also mark what status this is done with here. So we can move it over to done if it's done. I'm just going to change that back to our to-do list. And then I go into, and this has created a new branch called INK-2. So I can open this canvas. This will open it in a new tab, and this will load this project and start my canvas with the web app loaded here, where I can then make any changes to this using AI. So you've also got this AI chat on the left-hand side here, very similar to any other sort of vibe coding tool that you might be familiar with, where I can chat either with Claude Code, so you have access to Claude Code and all of the Claude code models here, or just whatever model that I want to use here. So if you're doing design changes, you probably want to use Gemini 3 Pro for that. If you're doing any functionality changes, you can use Opus 4.5 is a really good starting point for that as well. And then I can just prompt any design changes that I want to make. So this is to update the document editor design. So let's navigate to that page on our canvas so that we can see what we're working on. So I'm going to go full screen on this. I'm going to log in to my test account here, because this is set up on a development version of this app. Let's log in. Now I've got my document editor view here. So what I'm going to do is we're going to make some design changes to this document editor. Actually, we're going to make some changes to the document view here. It's just a simple list of documents. Nothing too special here. Why don't we update this first to a grid layout? So I'm just going to create some more new documents here. And I'm going to change this feature to like update document view on dashboard to a grid. So the first thing that we can do here is what we can do is using Opus. I'm going to use Opus 4.5 for this. Is just to say create a PRD for changing the document list on the dashboard of this app to a grid instead of a list, instead of a vertical list. Now this is going to create a PRD for us in this PRD view here. And then we're going to basically be able to ask the AI chat to execute that PRD, and that will update the code to do that feature. So now we've got a PRD here. You can see update document view on dashboard to a grid. Current state, the dashboard currently displays a vertical list format, grid layout, card design updates, CSS changes, component structure, acceptance criteria, files to modify. We can also then add a user flow diagram here if we want to do this. So you can see here that we've now got this mermaid diagram. So user lands on dashboard, is there documents available? Yes, render the document grid, check the viewport size, display a 1-column, a 2-column, or a 3-column grid. And then it's going through this entire flow. User hovers over card, clicks delete, delete button. So this is the entire user flow for documents from our dashboard. Now this might be a little bit of overkill for like this simple feature, but it definitely helps to give the AI the context of this as we're building stuff. And this is a much more familiar workflow through creating PRDs, doing the design, and then implementing that in actual code as you would do if you were on a product team in an actual company building a tech product or an application. And so now what we can do is say, following the PRD, let's implement the document grid on the dashboard. And so in this view, we're kind of using it like a more traditional kind of vibe coding tool with our PRD to actually build and design features in our application. So this is now going through and doing that. And the next thing that I want to show you is how you can bring in an application and just add that kind of design layer on top of it. So there we go. You can see pretty quickly that's made the change to the dashboard view here, where we've got these individual documents as a grid. And what we can do now, if we're happy with the way that this works, so let's go back, I can click delete, I still get the delete pop-up. I can change the title here, and we update the title on there, and it's also reordering that based on that. So this is giving it a much better chance at being successful in creating this change because of the PRD that we created here. And once that we're happy with this, we can go over to this branch here, and we can put in a message here and say added document grid view. And then we can commit this to our code base. This will commit changes on this branch. So let's commit these changes. And then if we want to push this to our main repository, we just say push new branch, and that will push the changes to GitHub to be reviewed as a pull request that can be merged into our main code and then go live on our actual application. And this is a way that you can work as a designer or a product person on a real code base. So what if you want to do some more design changes here? Well, let's go over to a different project that I've set up here called Hunt List, which is basically a very kind of like boring looking website, just to show you the kind of scope that you can do here. And I was pulling together like a little test PRD. I'm actually going to delete that and come into this design view, and we're going to start a new chat on the left hand side here. I'm going to put this into Gemini 3 Pro, and I'm going to add a screenshot of a design reference and then basically update the entire design of this website completely and create an entirely new style. And this is where Gemini 3 Pro and these kind of vibe design tools really come into their own. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get a reference. So let's go to Mobbin. So why don't we go for something more like this? This is a super interesting design for a website, and the colors are super interesting here as well. I think this will be a really interesting one to try and copy the design of. So I'm going to take a couple of screenshots here of this website design and just give it to Tempo as visual context for what we're working on, so that Tempo has an idea of the sort of look that we want to go for. So we've got Gemini 3 Pro selected. I am going to upload some more context for AI, which is going to be the screenshots that we just took. So let's add these in. And I'm just going to prompt, let's redesign the entire app to look like the UI in the screenshots provided. Make it professional, bold, and clean, following the exact UI style in the screenshots. So we're going to submit this to Gemini 3 Pro, and this is going to go through and design our entire application. And you can do it this way with prompting the AI to make design changes, or you can come into the individual elements on the screen here and change the sizing. And this pulls all of the Tailwind styling that you're using in your app, if you are using Tailwind. So I can change the font size here directly on the canvas using the design styles on the right hand side in this design view, or we can just prompt the design changes that we want using a UI kind of friendly model like Gemini 3 in the AI chat on the left hand side here. So now you can see Tempo has come back with a full redesign for this application here. It's a little bit luminous at the moment. If I go into the preview here, and you can see in the chat what it's gone through, it's done like a lot of component changes on the left-hand side here, and it's redesigned the entire page like this, following the same design patterns as the screenshot that we put in. It's not perfect, but it is pretty close, and it has chosen some really good fonts and styles here. It's a little bit bright at the top of but as you kind of go down, it kind of like it's a little bit more subtle as we go down here, which looks a little bit better. Obviously, we don't have any images in here, so you could generate an image for the back of this hero section. I think that would look really, really good. But it shows the power of Gemini 3 and these vibe coding tools, and also the ability to be able to design like this in really kind of broad changes on top of existing applications, like this little kind of rare collectibles marketplace app that I built for the purposes of kind of demoing Tempo here. And this is all connected from GitHub, so I can now commit these changes to the code, go to this branch, commit these changes, and then push that to GitHub if I want to actually make this a part of this real application. And this is going to be the way that people are going to work with design tools for software in 2026. And I honestly feel like there is going to be a huge movement to tools like this from existing tools like Figma, where you're just designing static images. It makes so much sense to me. There is still a bunch of roughness around the edges for a lot of these tools, but the vision for how this is going to change design is really there, and I think makes a lot of sense for a lot of software designers, vibe coders, and UX and UI designers, and anyone kind of working in product to kind of start using these tools to add that design layer on top of your existing applications that you're building. So now you've seen a glimpse of what the future of user experience and application design is going to be. Hopefully you can understand how these tools are going to completely change the industry in 2026 and beyond, and how you can start using them today to actually design on top of real applications. Whether you're a vibe coder building your own software application, or you're a designer working on a design team at a startup or a big company, if you can get ahead of these changes, then this is going to give you a huge benefit, whether you're looking for a promotion or whether you're just trying to build an incredibly well designed application by yourself. And if you are building an app with AI, I've got a community helping people do just that over at school.com/AI apps. So you can go over there to find out more. We've got over 200 people building apps with AI, getting real customers, and there is a design section in that community, which I'm doing more and more lessons for every single month. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It means a lot to me and it really helps the channel grow. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.
Build great products. Build great products.